So great to see everybody. And thank you, June and Deandas, again. And thank you for giving me the opportunity, the big opportunity to talk. So tonight, I'm going to talk about my philosophy about opportunity. As many of you might know, last year I decided to take a personal sabbatical from work. And I decided that the best thing to do would be to buy a 27-foot Coachman Freelander RV. And so what I did with the RV was I took the family on a big summer adventure of the Western National Parks. And during this time of adventure and sort of personal introspection, I came to embrace a philosophy that I think I already had, but I kind of embraced it a little bit more. And it's that if you can get comfortable with taking risks, then you're actually going to end up with a whole lot more opportunities. So that's what we're going to talk about. But the starting point of this is what is risk about? And some say that you're not really taking a risk unless you're really risking something. And what that means maybe is if you dump your life savings into an idea or a technology or a company, which I think a bunch of people here may have done, right? Or if you dump your money into an RV and take off for the summer, or if you risk your reputation or your status because you're interested in some kind of radical change, even if you don't quite know what the change is. Those things, that feels like risk, and I think that might be true, but based on my experience over the last bunch of months and some research that I'm going to foist upon you tonight, risk is something that's totally and completely uniquely our own, right? And so, other people can't really assess your risk, only you can. So I wanted to go ahead and just share with you a little bit of my background, and it'll give you an ability to sort of assess what created this risk profile. I'm the product of a very unlikely couple, a Jewish father, great-grandson of the famed great Rabbi Jacob Vorsanger from the Temple Emmanuel in San Francisco, and also of a German Christian mother, daughter to the mathematician Herr Dr. Wilhelm Bischoff, who actually was a code cracker and cracked American and French and British codes during World War II for the Nazis. So I was born in the 60s in Marin, just as things were getting pretty significantly messy. People were taking really big risks, actually, and shaking things up and finding their own opportunity. And my parents split up by the time I was 5 years old. And what my mom did is she ate natural foods and she dated hippies and she meditated and she sort of sought refuge at the nude beach at Stinson, near Stinson in Marin County. And my dad just tried to kind of make the best of everything and appear as if he was a little bit kind of hip. So what he did was he grew a beard and he lived on a houseboat in Sausalito and quit his career actually as a city planner for various communities around the Bay Area and became a contractor. And my dad's sort of side of the family, the artistic, communist-leaning, social activist sort of family members just applauded the move toward labor, and away from management and thought this was the best thing that he could do. So, that was my parents, and I grew up in Marin, and it was really right there during the 70s, and I discovered something about myself, which is I was kind of a risk taker too. And so I looked at a bunch of articles in Psychology Today, and I found out that there's a term for it. I was a high sensation-seeking child, okay? And what that means, or at least what it meant for me, is I really liked climbing, and I liked jumping off bridges. I liked setting off explosives a lot, and I flipped a lot in jiu-jitsu, and I was kind of driven to gymnastics because I could risk higher flips, and I could get on a trampoline, And this was all very exciting for me, really exciting. And it's just a part of my DNA. And as a high schooler, I began to kind of temper the thrill stuff a little bit because I was focusing on gymnastics more seriously, and I was focused on academics. But that's me. So now I'm going to turn for a second to the science of risk, because as it turns out, those of us who have like a larger appetite for risk have a particular body chemistry. We have lower levels of something called MAO, monoamine oxidase. I just call it MAO, MAO. And it's actually an enzyme, and what it does is it regulates arousal and inhibition and pleasure, and it actually helps digest these neurotransmitters, dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, all these transmitters that make you really happy. So it turns out if you have really low MAO, if you have lower MAO, then you're not digesting all these neurotransmitters that sort of make you sort of generally more risk-loving. And so people who have low MAO, just naturally in the way they are, they exhibit riskier behavior. And so unhealthy things that people who really have like significantly lower MAO is they gamble a lot, they drink, they like reckless driving, they become involved in like adultery, recreational drugs, crimes, explosives. This is what, so that's what happens, but also they can get involved in healthier things like thrill sports like climbing or gymnastics or high stakes investing or starting companies like you guys have done, or fighting for civil rights, these kinds of things. And essentially some of us with lower levels of MAO will be kind of predisposed to taking these big risks, assuming that you can kind of avoid whatever, dying or getting put in jail and this kind of stuff. So the second sort of science of risk thing that I learned about is this, is that feelings are a really, really big and important unconscious, element of what makes us make risk decisions. And we think we're being really analytical, but our feelings creep in constantly. It started, so I read about this, and the researchers describe it as sort of a faint whisper of emotion. So it's not like visceral fear of doing something. It's more like every experience you have in life has this sort of faint whisper of, that's good, or that's bad. And you can't really control it. It just happens in your stomach. And no matter what, these things affect what decisions you're doing. And it's called affect, actually. And so these things happen even when we think we're being massively rational. And so the experiment that I kind of liked, because it was interesting to me, was that psychiatrists were asked to make an assessment. Should we let this patient go out and kind of live among the general public? And the psychiatrists were provided with this expert opinion. But the expert opinion was shared in a couple of different ways. And the first way was, let me read it. Of every 100 patients similar to yours, 20 are estimated to commit violent crimes. So the psychiatrists would kind of imagine these 20 people committing violent crimes, and it had a very negative affect. And there was another way of saying that, which was patients similar to yours are estimated to have a 20% chance of committing an act of violence. So, 20% is the same either way. But that vision was, well, there's this guy, and 80% of the time he's not going to do anything bad, but maybe something will happen. And the results were really crazy, because these psychiatrists who are experts, over 40% of them, with that first phrase, envisioning these 40 or 20 people going out and committing like violent crimes, 40% of them wouldn't release the patient. But if said the other way, just about 20% wouldn't release. So it was like a pretty significant difference. Bottom line is we're just totally impacted by this. Essentially, this sort of affect will bias our decisions about risk. And this will be based on our innate sort of unconscious evaluation of the circumstances. And our affect then, coupled with our MAO levels, kind of determines our appetite for risk. But the thing is, these things are totally intermixed as well. And this is brought up by a guy named Scott Shine, who wrote a book on entrepreneurship. And he said, well, if you already have low MAO and you're sort of predisposed to have these high dopamines, you kind of have this really optimistic and happy outlook on life. And if you have this optimistic and happy outlook on life, that little voice inside your head just sort of says, good, it's all good, everything's good. So they're totally confounded and combined. So that's the science bit. And so now I want to kind of drag you back to the RV trip. So here we are, we're in the RV, and we parked on the Colorado River. We were in for a 5-day trip, and we followed this segment that went down from Moab, Utah, through Canyonlands, past the Green River, and into this thing called the Cataract Canyon, which goes sort of fast, and then into Lake Powell. And it was kind of like, okay, so I don't know if you guys have done the Colorado. How many have? So, okay. So it's sort of muddy, and it takes a long time to get through, and there's a lot of motoring, and it's sort of slow motoring. And I found myself getting sort of, motor bored. And my enzymes, my MAO enzymes felt low, and they kept going lower, and I was just looking for excitement. So when we came upon this sort of slow, meandering, big giant bend around this giant, like 1,500-foot bluff, I kind of said, well, hey, I'd like to take the risk of taking a hike and just hiking over the top instead of doing the whole big bend. And, and then I'll get the opportunity to see a different perspective. And Wendy was sort of, just not comfortable with this at all. And she said, there are scorpions. We've seen a bunch of scorpions, and there are shale cliffs, and it seems really steep. And what if the kids slip? And what if the flotilla kind of goes by and we miss it on the other side? And these were all like really good, reasonable, high MAO questions, right? and so on the third day, we just did it, and we jumped off the boats, and we began hiking up this 1,500-foot cliff toward what was called the Dollhouse, and the boats began their kind of slow, very risk-free jaunt around the corner on this languid sort of bend in the river. And we climbed up this, and we were rewarded by the most amazing opportunity. This was sort of cruising over there. There's T-Man doing a front flip, but we got to the top of this hill, and we had been stuck in the, in the valley of this river, motoring for like 3 days straight, and doing like 1 or 2 rapids. And we climbed up, and it was this totally different experience. It was my sabbatical from our motoring, and to me, this was just this moment of realization. We would not have had this breathtaking view had we not taken the sabbatical from this little trip, went up one side, took a couple risks, and go down the other. So, okay, that's the story. So it turns out our MAO levels actually increase with age. So it becomes more challenging for us to take risks as we grow older. Things start to feel scarier and just messier, and it just more conservative ideas just seem a lot more reasonable. And I'm realizing that I've gotten pretty comfortable with my own situation, education, stable family, relatively conservative, not a big risk-taking career. But just because we're biologically losing our appetite for risk as we age, it doesn't mean we have to lose out on these new opportunities. And I believe we can sort of trick this affect or unconscious evaluation side with logic. Just in terms of how we frame risk to ourselves. So here's the challenge I give you tonight for this talk. It's find your own risk, because risk is something that's totally unique, and it's totally your own. Nobody else can assess it. Challenge yourself. Find ways to take these risks that are truly meaningful to you. And if you do it, it'll open up a world which has, amazing, unexpected opportunities. Thank you.